got the atmosphere, and so far this weekend it's had the action. Alonso still feeling the pressure of Schumacher. Friday's road rage against Robert Dornbos incurred a 2-second qualifying penalty. The World Championship leader way back in the pack. And then Jenson Button, all that optimism disappearing with an exploding Honda engine. The resultant engine change would move him 10 places down the grid. And as the red flags waved after the engine blow, Michael Schumacher went past 3 cars, Alonso included. Schumacher also gets a 2-second penalty to send him back down the field. It gave Kimi Raikkonen the chance to produce a perfect lap to take pole position from Felipe Massa in the last seconds of qualifying. Raikkonen on pole, Schumacher row 6, Button row 7, Alonso row 8. You see why anything could happen in this Hungarian Grand Prix. Anything could happen, and it has. The one missing ingredient has been rain, and that's what we've got today. It's been steady rain, off and on with us all through the morning, and it looks like being with us through the race, making this the first ever wet Hungarian Grand Prix with all the new uncertainties that creates, because this would also be the first wet Formula One Grand Prix for almost a year. So predict this one if you can. Mark Blundell, that's your job. How many question marks now surround this race?
There's question marks all the way down this pit lane, Steve, because the big problem for these teams, I don't think any of them have actually run with their wet weather tyre this year. So there's no comparison been made against Bridgestone and Michelin. A lot of people now just deciding what they need to do. I don't know what's going to happen with the weather. It's been raining all morning long. It's actually just stopped now, so if we get to a situation it starts drying out quickly, it's a lot of headaches.
Yeah, what if it becomes a 50-50 race? That's even more problematic for the team.
Nobody wants that. They don't want a 50-50 race. They either want it dry or wet so they can make a clear-cut decision. If it does start to get towards there, we're going to have a lot of people, worrying about what choice they make. If they make the wrong tyre choice and they're out there for too many laps, valuable time lost.
So at the moment, this rain, is it to anyone's advantage? You've got Schumacher back in the pack.
It's the one man who's sitting there at the moment very confident about what he's got underneath him, because he's got the flexibility with his fuel load sitting in 11th position. He can just wait until the very last moment to make a choice on how much fuel they put into that car. He knows he's on Bridgestones with a Ferrari. He's got a good package and he's great in the wet.
Well, let's take a further look back at the events of yesterday. Martin Brundle isn't with us this weekend. He knows what weekend to pick his holidays. Anthony Davidson, the Honda test driver, will be co-commentator alongside James Allen this afternoon. And the two of them got together to look back at yesterday's qualifying.
So 2 pole positions in a row for Kimi Raikkonen. Can he turn this one into a race victory? Massa alongside him, once again in the Ferrari. Through to row 2, Barrichello, terrific performance by him, and Della Rosa getting closer to the pace. Webber, another outstanding qualifying by him, and Ralf Schumacher, the first of the Toyotas. Then it's Fisichella and Trulli on row 4. Through to row 5, Kubica, the standout qualifier, alongside his teammate Nick Heidfeld. Michael Schumacher, what can he do from 11th on the grid, with David Coulthard alongside him? Christian Klien and Jenson Button, who dropped 10 places after changing an engine, in 14th. Alonso shares row 8 with Thiago Monteiro. He probably doesn't even know who he is. Through to row 9, Liuzzi and Rosberg, who underperformed in qualifying. Sato is alongside Scott Speed, who was punished by the stewards for blocking other competitors. And at the back, it's Yamamoto and Christian Albers, who has to change an engine.
It's very difficult to say from practice where all the tires are. You see such a big drop off on some laps and some not. So I think so we made a pretty good choice for the race. So for sure we were expecting to have more difficult in the qualifying than in the race. So I think so we're going to have a good race.
I think everything looks very well for me to fight for the victory. I will try definitely my best to be in the front, and but the race I think maybe is a big opportunity tomorrow.
I just had a good lap. I just put it in a good lap. I lost a little bit in sector 1 on braking, but the rest was quite a flying lap.
And then came the rain. Would Rubens Barrichello be encouraged or not by the dramatic change in conditions?
I think he'd be okay with it. I don't think there's any problems for any of these drivers if it's wet or whether it's dry. It's the same for anyone. It's a relative situation. But I think there's a couple of guys out there. Kimi Raikkonen obviously going to be at the front there, and I think also people like Michael Schumacher with the flexibility of the fuel load going to have a touch more confidence.
But some carefully worked out strategies have been torn up and thrown away, haven't they?
Oh, definitely, Steve, because it really has thrown a whole new dimension into this mix now. We've got the top 10. Their fuel is fixed. They can't do anything. 11th place onwards with Schumacher. They've got the strategy they can change up until the last moment now, so they're going to be watching these conditions to get to that stage.
Yes, back in the pack, we've got Fernando Alonso, the World Championship leader and world champion, and Michael Schumacher, the only man who can catch him in the title race this season. Sort of marooned back in the grid after their 2-second penalties. No real argument from Fernando Alonso about the penalty imposed on Friday. But what about Michael Schumacher, judged to have overtaken under a red flag yesterday morning? Alonso was leading the cars round under the red flag, but did he slow deliberately and force Michael Schumacher to overtake illegally?
You feel it was an unfair move, what he did, slow down on purpose?
I have not said that, no. You said this. I simply said that watch the pictures and you may understand why I have been doing what I have been doing. And you may then judge yourself whether this penalty is, in relation to many other penalties, the right one or not.
Michael seemed to suggest that you were involved in maybe brake testing him or deliberately making him pass you under the red flag. Tell us about that incident.
I have nothing to tell. It's the stewards, they have all the information and they made the decisions, and of course I didn't make anything because I get no penalty and he had the penalty.
Always a good time to talk to Bernie Ecclestone, especially today. First of all, thoughts about Alonso and Schumacher, the penalties that were imposed earlier this weekend. Justified?
I suppose so. I mean, the first penalty that Alonso got was very justified. He's a world champion and should set an example, not doing what he did. Under the yellow flag, that's a regulation. So I suppose, yes, justified. And then, thank God, Michael sort of could see that it would probably spoil the race doing that, so he helped us and justified this by taking under the red flag and got 2 seconds.
There seems to be a real bit of edge and a great sort of rivalry developing between the two, and that's great for Formula One, isn't it?
It's good, super.
Is it reminiscent in your mind of Senna and Prost and the great days then?
A little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just as well they're not in the same team.
Well, who knows? But the conditions we've got today, what sort of demands and what sort of problems does that pose for everyone involved in Formula One?
Well, thank God for us it's not raining now, so we don't get wet, which is a good thing. But as far as the race is concerned, it depends on who's going to have the best wet tyre. If Michelin got a good tyre, obviously they're going to benefit. But I think Schumacher with a good Bridgestone tyre maybe be a big surprise to people.
How much do you enjoy this time of year when the championship is coming to a real climax and everyone is talking about contracts and driver changes? There's an awful lot going on this time of year, isn't there?
Certainly is. I think you'll know when we know when Michael's going to settle somewhere, we know where the rest of the people are going.
Have you got any thoughts on that, any inside knowledge or any preference?
No, I'd like him to stay at Ferrari, Kimi to go with Renault, and Alonso to be with McLaren, but it's not going to happen.
And there's a question mark also at Ferrari over Ross Brawn. Are you a fan of taking 1-year sabbaticals?
I can't see him doing that, to be honest with you. I think if he leaves Ferrari, the danger is if he goes, I think Todd will go, and if they go, Michael will go.
Okay, final thought on how this Formula One World Championship season is going to resolve itself. Who's going to come out on top at the end?
Well, I mean, you'd have to say that somebody that's got the points at the moment will probably come out on top. It depends an awful lot on this race as well.
Yeah, it is good after everything is so sort of planned and worked out in Formula One to have a race like today that is an absolute lottery, isn't it?
You mean we didn't plan Michael overtaking under the red flag?
Of course not.
No.
Bernie, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks
all the
a lot.
best.
Thank
Keep
you
dry
very much.
today.
Thank you.
Right, let's give you a check on the Formula One World Drivers' Championship standings. The last 3 races, of course, producing Michael Schumacher victories, a couple of those, and he's closed the gap on Fernando Alonso to 11 points with 6 races remaining. Massa, Raikkonen, Fisichella, pretty close battle for third. And it's Raikkonen who might steal the headlines today. Mark, this has to be just about Raikkonen's best chance of victory this season, even in these conditions.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the guy's starting on pole position. We know he's got the speed there. I think also McLaren have come into this with quite an aggressive strategy. They come off the back of Hockenheim, some success there. But Kimi, he revels in these conditions. He's got no problem. But what Bernie Ecclestone was alluding to and what we mentioned as well, it depends on what the tyre situation is. If Michelin have got something that's going to work in these conditions, Raikkonen is off because he's going to have clear advantage, no spray from other cars. 1 or 2 cars in front of you, you can't see nothing out there on the race circuit.
Yeah, and to an extent, Felipe Massa is off the leash today as well, isn't he?
Well, you know, Massa's got the best opportunity for his career, full stop, to go out and win a Grand Prix. front row, Ferrari, Bridgestone, all the ingredients are there. It's just whether he gets that start and that jump. But I tell you something, he's going to have to be quick because Raikkonen's eyes are going to be focused on turn 1. He'll want to get out in front and make that break.
But how's he going to work out in the middle of the pack, rows 6, 7 and 8? And in particular, Michael Schumacher, P11, with all the extra options that provides. Tell us about that.
Oh, he's got the strategy there, what they can make the last moment. He's going to put the fuel in what's going to suit the conditions, and he's going to be the old head there. He knows all about being back there. He's been there before in conditions and in circumstances like this. I think you're going to see Ferrari and Michael Schumacher at their best today, and I won't be surprised to be seeing the end of this Grand Prix with him at the front of it.
And Jenson Button, we know all about his problems getting off the start line. How do these conditions today affect those problems?
Well, you know, the launch strategy these cars have got, some of it's going to get sucked up with these wet conditions and may not be quite as efficient, so the Renaults may not be quite as good as what they normally are. But Jenson just needs to get a result. Like he did in Hockenheim, we saw him with 4th position. If Jenson can get in the top 6, I think that'd be great.
But all three drivers, Alonso, Button and Schumacher, desperately keen to stay out of trouble at that first corner, and all a bit concerned about tyres, as everyone here is in the pit lane. Ted Kravitz has more on that.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. Let's have a quick look at the tyres in some technical detail. This is the intermediate Bridgestone, and this is the full wet Bridgestone, and this is really proven race technology. The Bridgestones have been very successful in the wet, as everybody knows, over the years. But here at Michelin, it's a very different story. Michelin have figured that it's better to have understeer, i.e. the car just spinning off harmlessly into the distance, rather than oversteer, the back coming round and you crashing into something. So what they've done is redesigned the rear tyre in this way. It's a very clever design. It just pushes the rain up there into this very deep channel, and it's a different pattern, rear to front. But Steve, the thing is, with these Michelins, they are completely non-proven in a race. They've never been run in a race. So for the Michelin runners, if they run these extreme wets, it's a big step into the unknown.
Mark, is that the similar situation for Bridgestone and Ferrari here? How much would they know about Bridgestone's wet weather tyres?
They have a certain amount of knowledge. There would have been some testing taking place, and they would have been doing wet weather testing. And the tyre manufacturers themselves do a lot of simulation work and even run the tyres on their own test facilities as well. Still a lot of data out there, still a lot of clever people in this pit lane and know what they're doing.
But the pole position man is Kimi Raikkonen, pole position in Germany last week as well, and of course he won this Hungarian Grand Prix a year ago, and if he was to win today, it will be a tremendous way of celebrating his 100th Formula One Grand Prix. Well, Ted Kravitz caught up with him this past week, and that was no mean achievement.
Action! Kimi spent last weekend playing movie star, relaxing in his trailer, checking the tabloids for stories about himself before jetting down to HMS Invincible to star in a Top Gun-style commercial shoot for one of McLaren's sponsors. But with the big guns of Alonso and Schumacher all at sea here in Budapest, today has to be the season's best chance for a win for this matinee idol. You're celebrating 100 Grand Prix this weekend. Is there one Grand Prix that you think you especially enjoyed? Maybe Japan last year?
Yeah, it was good. For sure, one of my best memories is Japan, Monaco, but there was quite many good races last year, so it's hard to pick up the one what is the best over the others. But there could be also races where we haven't finished, but we've been quick and not maybe got what we wanted. But I don't know, I have had good seasons last year, so...
In Hockenheim, loads of things went wrong. Your throttle linkage, the shifting, the diff, all hydraulics related. Then that must have been impossible to drive.
No, for a couple laps, yes, because we had some difficulties to find the right setup. But then once everything sort of came back to normal, it was okay. But for sure, it didn't make it any easier.
What's your assessment for where exactly McLaren are in competition with Renault and Ferrari?
I think so. It was much easier before last race to say, really, because we seemed to be a little bit behind both of them. But suddenly the last race was completely different, and we were not as quick as the Ferraris, but then probably the second quickest team. So I think so it's hard to say really right now. We need to wait a couple of races and see which way it's going.
Lots of stories going on about driver moves. Are you any closer to deciding your future?
No.
What about the stories of Ross leaving Ferrari? Would you be happy to go at Ferrari without someone like Ross there?
I don't know, it's nothing to do with me, so we need to ask from him what is he doing or his plans, and in the end it's not affecting my decisions.
But the one thing that wasn't in the equation when that conversation with Ted Kravitz happened was the thought of the cool temperatures we've had here in Hungary this week. and also the rain that we've got for this Hungarian Grand Prix. But Kimi Räikkönen preparing to head for pole position and to head out into the unknown like so many other drivers in this very wet Hungaroring pit lane. Plenty more to come as we continue our build-up to part 2, including our regular pre-race conversation with Jenson Button. Come back to the Hungaroring, the 21st staging of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and the first time in the wet. And Michael Schumacher, along with everyone else, is starting to learn exactly what that means. And rarely for this event also have temperatures been so low or expectations so high, with Alonso and Michael Schumacher starting way back down the grid in some very difficult conditions, although the rain is not falling at the moment. Jenson Button also with the challenge of starting between Schumacher and Alonso on row 7 of this grid. And Button came to Hungary with strong expectations. They were blown apart when his Honda went bang in yesterday's practice, and he would take a grid penalty of 10 places for an engine change. And he talked about his continuing frustrations of his season and exactly what it's like for the driver when an engine lets go with this violence.
It's pretty much get the car stopped as soon as you can and jump out, because they do catch fire quite easily, the oil. So you've got to get out pretty quickly. But, you know, lately I've been used to it. So
yeah. Okay, it leaves you back in the middle of the grid, which is an interesting middle of the grid. You're between Michael and Fernando Alonso. What is life going to be like from the middle of the pack tomorrow?
Well, first of all, you know, I was happy with qualifying to be P4, because I braked for the last corner. For the first corner, I hit the brakes and I had the front inside lock the whole way in. I lost 4 tenths to my best lap in quali, so you know, to be fourth, it was pretty good after that. I was quite happy. But now I'm starting back in 14th. You know, I've got a Renault in 15th on the grid. It's very like Hockenheim, but, you know, 10 places back. So it's going to be tough to keep him behind it at the start. Hopefully I can get him back at turn 1, because I think he might hold us up.
And a different kind of circuit, of course, to Hockenheim in terms of overtaking potential.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's very difficult here. Hockenheim for me is one of the best circuits for overtaking, along with Turkey. So it's going to be difficult. You know, turn 1 is pretty much the only place you can overtake during the race. So we've just got to make it work on the first lap. You know, we need to have a very big first lap, and I think we can do that.
Yeah. Do you think life might be a wee bit difficult down at turn 1?
It is, because, you know, I got Michael in front who's going to be trying to fight his way through. Alonso alongside me, so it's going to be pretty hectic. But it's not just turn 1. Turn 2 is a good place to catch people asleep, and there are other few places around the circuit that we can hopefully get past a few people.
Well, both you and Rubens have shown today what the car is capable of. Long term, you're targeting Turkey with a little bit more optimism than here.
Yeah, you know, Turkey is a circuit I love. We went very well there last year in the race, and it's a circuit that should suit our car. We have some improvements with the car and with the engine. So yeah, you know, after a long break, we're going to be itching to get back in the car, because I know it's going to be a good race for us. And it's nice to have a good qualifying here. It shows that Hockenheim wasn't a one-off, and we do have the pace, and we have made a good step forward.
And what is the driver's eye view of the penalties that were imposed on Michael and Fernando? Justified?
Yeah, it's difficult for a driver to comment, because, you know, if I had those penalties, I wouldn't be happy with them. But you know, I think it was called dangerous driving on their part, so they got 2-second penalties. The only pain is that I had an engine failure and I go back 10 places and end up behind Michael, which is, you know, it's a very strange system in the way that it's working. But anyway.
Life is hard, but that's been the story of the season. But
exactly, but you know, at least the pace of the car is there. We just got to sort the reliability out, because it's very disappointing to be in this situation.
Do what you can. It's going to be interesting.
Thank you.
This week's question is all about footwork. Andrew Skip from Greenford has asked what's special about drivers' boots and how are they designed to perform in the cockpit. Well, I've got McLaren's third driver, Gary Paffett, and he's going to explain a little bit about them.
Well, here we've got one of Kimi's boots. As you can see, it's got a very thin sole on the boot, which is designed to make you have better feel on the pedals. Too thin, and it might give you some vibrations through your feet, make your feet go to sleep. But the thinner, the better, really. Also, the height of the boot is quite important. You know, some have a bit smaller than this. Some have a higher boot for more ankle protection. Again, it's just driver preference. And the biggest thing about these boots is the lack of any laces. You know, there's a bit of elastic and a bit of Velcro here. I personally use a boot with laces. We've had some with zips on the side before, but it's all driver preference really, and I think you'll struggle to find two sets of boots down the pit lane that are the same.
So footwear is an essential part of the driver's kit. Even Kimi Räikkönen has been presented with a special pair of golden boots this weekend to celebrate 100 Grand Prix starts.
Well, forget about flimsy boots. I think a good sturdy pair of wellies would be the order of the day here. It looks like we're set for the first wet race of the season, the first ever wet race in 21 years here at the Hungaroring. It's also been incredibly cold. That's been causing big problems for the team up to now. They've been having a lot of graining with their tyres. But Sam, the fact that it's raining, it's actually working in everyone's favour now, isn't it?
Well, it means that you're busy trying to decide whether to go on full wet, whether you go on full wets or inters at the moment. So we're just seeing where the level of the track is, and it can obviously change very quickly if it rains again. But yeah, it's possible we might be on slicks by the end of the race, but that would require it not to rain again. And that's unlikely.
Now, you've got Nico Rosberg out there with a variable fuel level, so he can do a few laps. What kind of information has he been giving you?
Right now, he's running wets and inters to decide full wets and standard wets to decide which one is the best one to race on. Even though the race is still another 20 minutes away, it'll tell him which one's warming up and which one's not.
Would you prefer to start under a safety car here or a normal start?
I think it's like this. You can probably get away with it. Depends if it starts raining again. You can probably get away with a normal start, but I'm sure Charlie will do the right thing.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Cheers.
We're seeing some fairly lurid slides from drivers out on the circuit at the moment, Mark. What are they actually learning out there?
They're just trying to ascertain the grip level, and what Sam Michael's referring to is what tyre they need to take for the conditions. The intermediate has got a little bit more of a tyre for a dry 50-50 conditions and will lean towards the dry line, but the actual wet tyre is a full-blown wet tyre which disperses a lot of water and has a lot of grip. At this point in time, I think a lot of the guys may go for the inter, because if it doesn't rain anymore, I think they're in a good position to take that tyre choice.
As they try to sort themselves out. We'll give you one more chance now at our ITV F1 competition with its star prize, and Mark can give you some more details. And good luck with that. The big topic here this weekend, apart from the weather and the tyres, has been driver moves, the driver's market at the moment, driver changes, new contracts, and Louise can tell us exactly what's been going on.
It's that time of year again. All around the paddock, clandestine meetings and top-secret negotiations are taking place behind closed doors as team bosses try and scout the top drivers and lure them into their ranks. And we're starting to see the branches of those negotiations bear fruit, but at Sauber it's come as a crushing blow for Jacques Villeneuve. The team says he's suffering headaches after his Hockenheim shunt and has stood him down, maybe for good. Robert Kubica's already impressed here in Hungary as he steps up from his usual testing role, but will he get the drive full-time in 2007?
When we took him on, it was a certain risk because he was not known to anybody, basically. We know now the risk paid off, and certainly we want to have him with us in the long term.
Williams has just announced it's taken up its option on Nico Rosberg. No surprises there. But confirmation that Alex Wurz will drive the second car next season came as a bit of a shock.
Although he's not a spring chicken, he's still very young for the amount of time that he's been in Formula One, because he started so early. So I think that he's definitely the right choice for us next year.
So what about Williams' current driver, Mark Webber? Well, it seems like he's Red Bull bound. In the coming week, the team is expected to announce that it's signed the Australian and re-signed David Coulthard.
We want to put the best two drivers in the car that we can, and Red Bull is a pretty attractive team at the moment with an Adrian Newey car coming next year. There's quite a few guys in the pit lane that would like to be behind the wheel.
Webber had been linked to Renault as he's managed by Flavio Briatore, but so's Renault's hot young tester Heikki Kovalainen, and it looks like he'll be the man racing alongside Giancarlo Fisichella next season. The team had been holding out for another hot Finn, Kimi Räikkönen. McLaren would also like to retain him to run alongside Fernando Alonso next season. But it looks like Kimi's slipping out of their grasp, and if so, they'll stick with one of the three drivers already in the McLaren stable: Pedro de la Rosa, Gary Paffett or Lewis Hamilton.
Well, I can tell you that Fernando Alonso is in one of the seats, and I can tell you we've got some good options with Pedro, with Gary and with Lewis. Kimi is an undecided future at the moment. I think we're talking to Kimi, we know others are talking to Kimi, but in the event that Kimi's fortunes lie elsewhere, then I think we're in a very strong position.
It seems most likely Raikkonen's fortunes lie with Ferrari. But will Massa be his teammate? Ferrari's believed to have taken up its option on the Brazilian, but he could be forced into a testing role. That all depends on this man. Will he stay or will he go? Michael's not letting on quite yet.
Have you learnt any more, Mark, this week about what Michael Schumacher is likely to decide and when?
No, nothing at all, Steve. And I don't think anybody knows, and only Michael himself will make the decision when he feels it's right. And you have to say, at this point, he's winning Grand Prix. The World Championship's getting closer. It's a difficult decision for him to make. I think a lot of it will depend on what Ross Brawn does, Jean Todt, all that team of people around him, because they've been such a big support team for so long.
But all the concern now is about conditions. It has stopped raining. It's stopped raining now for about 10 minutes. There's a decent breeze. From your experience, is this track likely to start drying?
Well, we would think so, but I mean, the experience here with wet conditions has never been seen before. We're really used to seeing temperatures in the high 30s, track temperatures in the 50s, and this is very extreme. What we need to consider now is whether the guys have made the right choice. If some of them have gone intermediate, some have gone on a full-blown wet. The full-blown wet will need a lot of water to keep it cool. If it doesn't have that rain and laying water there, the tyre will soon overheat and will be inefficient, and the intermediate will come into its own.
Well, the furthest back on the grid that someone has won this Hungarian Grand Prix from is 12th on the grid. That was Nigel Mansell back in 1989. It's a position occupied today by David Coulthard. Let's hear from him.
At the moment, people are still going off, and you'd think they'd be trying out the intermediates, right?
Yeah, there's no question that the full wet can handle what water's on the track, but it'll burn out the rear tyre very quickly. So from a pace point of view, you want to be on the inter, but of course you've got a much smaller gauge of tyre, more susceptible to standing water, and a little bit more difficult to get temperature in them.
So what do you think? What's your gut feeling that you're going to take, full wet or inters?
I think that if it stays like this and doesn't rain anymore, then you have to go inter to avoid a pit stop. But if you have a little bit of rain, then you saw the track this morning. So the truth is, I don't know what the right decision at this moment is. Intermediates.
Well, let's see what Renault's view is on that. Pat, is this the conditions at the moment? Is this full wets, or are you going to be taking the intermediates?
No, it's certainly not full wets at the moment, but it's a very changeable condition. We've got our radar up on the hill over there. It's seeing showers coming, disappearing, coming, disappearing. But right now, the way the circuit is, it's not full wets, it's intermediates. But the troublesome thing is it's very, very cold, so even the intermediate tyres are going to really be struggling to get grip.
So potentially this could be the kind of race, these conditions, that could work in Fernando's favour.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly you wouldn't want to be on too light a fuel load at the moment, because it is going to take a while to dry out. It's anyone's guess when the ideal first stop is, because if you can go inside your fuel and going onto a dry tyre, it's perfect. But who knows, it may rain again.
You're going to have a busy race.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Pat.
And given with all the uncertainty that we have over conditions, there's Rubens Barrichello, who's well placed on row 2. But we're not riding off the victory prospects for the likes of Fernando Alonso and certainly Michael Schumacher and anyone in the middle of that grid.
No, we're not writing any prospects off for these guys at all, because with these kind of conditions there is such a variation, anything can happen. But you still have to say, Steve, at this moment Michael Schumacher, with that optional fuel load with the Bridgestone, is probably in the best position.
We saw Rubens, let's hear from him now.
Well, Rubens, what's your feeling on where we go, intermediates or full wets? I see you've got full wets ready.
Yeah, I don't know. It's still a nice call. I need to wait and see. It's not a definitive right now. The track is just about to be on the intermediates, on the wets, and so we need to wait and see.
So a day for keeping a cool head, though, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, and the feet on the ground.
And certainly Michael Schumacher will be thinking in terms of victory. This circuit we always compare to Monaco with its limited overtaking opportunities. How might that change within these conditions? Might there be more chances to get past in the wet?
There's definitely more chance, because there's more risk of people making mistakes. A small driver error in these conditions is very easily done. And also because there is that difference in grip level between the tyres and the cars, there are going to be different lines and opportunities are going to arise. And I think you're going to see someone like Schumacher here who's going to be starting with a load of fuel on, which is going to give him plenty of options there to try and drive through the pack and put those guys under pressure. Raikkonen, though, is going to be the guy with hopefully the clear spray not in his advisor, because you know, he's got no one there in front of him once he gets off the line cleanly.
And could we just emphasise again how careful the likes of Schumacher and Jenson Button have to be heading into that first turn?
Yeah, they have to be very careful indeed, but sometimes a lot of the guys will try and take the wide line to keep out the trouble, and the problem with that is the guys will go on the original race line, get it slightly sideways, maybe out of shape, and collect those guys on the outside. We've seen it time and time again in wet condition and into turn one. Hopefully that won't happen.
Michael Schumacher 11 points behind Alonso in the Drivers' Championship, but a mixed-up grid and it's mixed-up weather, all of which combines to make the events of the next couple of hours very, very hard to predict. It's the final countdown to the Hungarian Grand Prix when we return.